Hello, everybody, and welcome today. So, politics is something that I would like to get away from, not focus on, not think about, just like everybody else, or the majority of us at least. We just want peace from politics. We don't want to hear about it in our lives. We don't want to be sitting there watching a show or having a conversation or enjoying a drink or whatever we like to do in our lives and have someone bring up something about politics. What opinion you should agree with? Will you accept this? Is this something that you will do? Will you vote for this? Do you want to listen to this guy? Look what this guy's saying today. Look what she's saying today. Politics. The stuff that the majority of us today, every time it's brought up, we just want to avoid. We just want to get away from. And I understand why. And more, especially being a person who has made a lot of videos with a lot of his YouTube time in the past relating politics, what's happening with our world, what's happening with policy changes and law changes and how it's affecting us and how it should be affecting us and how it shouldn't be affecting us, talking about censorship and our free speech and our freedom of expression and all this stuff that becomes something of a great debate, especially with today, with a lot of this environment trying to impose censorship, trying to impose certain movements that are changing people's culture, changing people's beliefs, having people having to think about things that perhaps in the past they didn't want to think about, or just some people just living their lives and just changing with the times. They just go with the flow. They try to agree with whatever they want to agree with. If they disagree with something, they just kind of either try to avoid it or just try to agree to disagree. They just want peace. They just want to live their lives, and in whatever way this affects them or it doesn't affect them, people just go with the flow. And then there's people who can't go with the flow and are always having arguments, against the flow. Every time something happens or every time there's a change, you always hear that person's voice and what they have to say about it. So in society and life, we have all sorts of personalities. And I'm one of those personalities that have had all sorts of opinions on politics and opinions against speaking about it, opinions on having to speak about it, and just in general, just what you experience when you're dealing with this stuff. And quite frankly, a lot of it is confusion. A lot of it is a headache. That's for sure. Because when it comes to politics and debating, especially today's modern politics and a little bit of our recent history of politics and what has happened relating those politics, it can be a bit confusing. It can be a bit filled with tension and just bring the conversation into a situation that perhaps the majority of the people who are around that conversation or participating in that conversation perhaps don't want it to go to. And I would say that a lot of the way we look at politics today, where we don't want to learn about it, or if we do, it's a bit of a debate, or it's always like some sort of conflict to the point where you either gotta really be well prepared mentally for it or just completely run away from it. That is, I would say, in a way, pretty designed. It's made to be like that, so that the people who are supposed to be paying attention to what's happening with our situations, with our governments, with our law changes and everything, the people who are supposed to be paying attention to that don't really pay attention to it, because often the way that these laws are changing, the way the government is changing, is in a way where it's actually removing people's rights, removing people's expression, making it more complicated, making it more expensive, often giving power and giving more leniency to people who are more into fraudulent activities than actually governing the country. Because if you look at it, no matter how you try to cut this cake, no matter how you try to manage resources, and no matter how much responsibility you try to give to someone to manage those kind of resources, to manage that sort of power, those kind of responsibilities, that sort of knowledge, you're always going to get corruption. And I'm telling you that in today's times, with the amount of power our governments have, especially being backed by science and a lot of good technology that should be making our lives easier, it is making our lives easier in many senses. But what's happening is that it's actually making the life easier of people who hurt us, people who rob us, people who make our life harder because they're profiting off that. or in some sort of way they're fulfilling some sort of radical view or something. There's always people out there that have a lot of motivation. They bring up all that determination so that they can be able to rob others. And in robbing others, they get pleasure, they get property, they get a lot of resources, they get to own what they want. They get to have a nice house on the hill with a nice little pool installed, and everything is good. They can have parties whenever they want it. Yes, unfortunately, a lot of what governs us, or a lot of what tries to govern us, tries to find excuses for them to be the ones governing us. Unfortunately, that's what they do. So, especially like you're living in a lot of good places in Europe in today's times, or in Canada or the United States, specific locations in the United States that are better off than others, or in Canada, which the entirety of Canada, specifically more to the south of it, should be really prosperous, should be a place that's filled with opportunities, a land of opportunities. All of Canada should be like that. With the resources Canada has, and the ability to properly manage those resources and exploit them in a way that can do so much, I'm telling you, Canadians can have a much better life. And same with a lot of people in Europe, and same with a lot of people in the United States. But the thing is that you always get people who want more land than others, more resources, more wealth, much more power than others. I'm not just talking about like having like a little farm or something. These people, what they want to do is that they want to own entire cities. They want to play Monopoly with their lives. They're used to playing Monopoly with their lives, because a lot of the people who have these ambitions, have these motivations, and have the power to do this are people whose families have actually been in governing for a very long time. These are basically autocratic systems that are wedged in our democratic systems. And what they're doing is that they're manipulating our democracy, using the Hollywood, using the media, the education system, everything, for them to keep us in this continuous circle of being content, of having a life that you can get enough, and if you try getting more, you can obtain it, but getting enough is never really viewed as enough, and getting more is never enough. It's basically this whole thing where people have this capitalist versus socialist or communist versus like the kind of governments that we have today. And I'm saying that everybody's right. You know, the capitalist wants to have something where there's a market where people can compete fairly, where yes, a person that has a lot of wealth and power can continue with that wealth and power, while at the same time offering or pretending to offer opportunities to the people at the bottom. Well, there's the other one, communist, or the socialist system, that says that they're trying to distribute the wealth, that the tax is fair, and to many senses it is fair. It can be fair. And in today's system, especially in Canada and the United States, it's a bit of a combination of that, where taxes are distributed to helping our society, to funding certain programs, certain things that help our people, especially maintaining our roads and our stuff, and in certain things with their educational systems, so that people can have public schools, so that they can have police protection and all that stuff. It makes sense. And also so the government can have enough to provide defense for the people, to provide just whatever the people needs, while at the same time providing that system where people compete and people can lose, but at the same time, if you play your cards right, you can win. And obviously we know that the capitalist system is obviously very compromised. It's a mixture of a lot of things. It's not always this capitalist idea, and neither is it this bad capitalist idea where they say that it's just the greedy always winning. But in many senses it is like that. And then there's the communist socialist thing that has been a recent trend. A lot of what our governments are actually shaped around, or trying to actually fully become. The idea of, like I said, sharing resources and distributing to the people who are less wealthy, having the person who's actually working and working the trades, working the majority of the industries, to have a little bit more say. But in reality, when you actually look at all communistic systems that have existed and have actually lived, all that excuse for giving equality to people and the workers, and even aiding certain movements like LGBT, like what we see today. In the past, it has aided stuff like that, pretending to give people rights, and then once that system actually installed its communism, installed its full thing, what it ended up doing is actually becoming extremely tyrannical. It ended up actually putting people in concentration camps. People ended up going into a slave system where the whole country was basically a concentration camp, where the media and everything, the education system, is teaching the prosperity of the country. So it's like what we fought against, when we fought Hitler, when the Allies fought Hitler, and we're trying to topple Hitler so that he wouldn't conquer the world and do what we said he was going to do. Communism was actually actively doing that way before Hitler, during Hitler, and way after Hitler, and to this day. If you look at systems like China, North Korea, and other systems that are communist, Cuba, kind of what's happening right now in Venezuela, if you look at it really closely, you'll see that it's absolute tyranny. It's absolute. It has nothing to do with giving, people rights and having people be more equal. More like everybody's who's at the bottom is equally destroyed, while everybody on the top nearly is equally, more like capitalist-like, but all of them are equally past the line of being well off. Well, from there, now they got different ranks of who's better off than the ones. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty sad. That, like, I'm basically explaining to you that no matter how you cut it, there's always going to be bad government. Like, no matter how you try to install a good government, a good system, it's always going to end up to it being manipulated. People who are equipped, who are used to it, who are really smart, and are able to cheat others out of their rights. And yeah. And today we got this human rights. We got all these things that are supposed to, make our governments good, our systems good. Where we have our voice respected and represented in the highest courts for whatever we need, especially as citizens. Where we have specialists that are dedicated to hearing our voices, and quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, to a certain extent, it is like that. Because the people who are managing this, the corporations who are running this, the systems that are competing against each other, they're actually helping each other out. Where the wood that they're using, like let's just say they're carpenters and they're a competing business, but they're cutting it from the same forest, and we're that forest. So either way, they're doing good. One may lose, one may be put out of business, but he still come out there, or he's recruited to the other side. But we are the ones who are ultimately being chopped down and used as the material. We're the ones who are being used basically as the fodder, we're the ones being called the squalor. We're the ones being called the problem, the lack of responsibility in our country. Well, it's the people who are managing this, creating this. And then every time we suffer with things, or we go through things, or there's too much squalor in our countries, too much issues, they use it to install laws, to make it harder for us, to reduce the population, to install things that, quite frankly, are not just corrupt anymore, but are beyond corrupt. They're tyrannical. They're quite frankly genocidal. And the whole point of this video, I guess, is just to remind people of what we're actually dealing with, what we actually see, what we can actually expect. Of course, if we push hard enough to something positive is going to come out. But the thing is that we have to push for that. We have to be aware. We constantly have to educate ourselves. We constantly have to look at what's happening in our lives, what's happening around us, what's managing us, what's managing our resources, where are taxes going, how our kids are being educated. You know what I'm saying? And then from there, we don't have to depend on CNN and all this stuff, to get our news and all our information, because we're pretty up to date. Because we're involved directly in what's happening. And that's what people have to begin to understand too, is that we do have the right to be involved. We do have the right to be directly involved. We do have the right to know what's happening. But at the same time, with responsibility and maturity, because let's just say there's a huge disaster and our government knows about it. Of course we got to know about it. But if the government's going to see that everybody's going to panic and it's just going to turn into anarchy and chaos and complete destruction, then obviously they got to find a way to tell the people. But it's also the responsibility of the government to tell the people. But when the government, is hurting the people, causing disasters, genetically and socially and geo or whatever they do with engineering, just engineering problems, things that they're going to have to install laws, allowing problems to happen with our health, allow the food industry to not properly quality, you know what I'm saying, like allowing crimes to happen, allow gun violence to happen, allow drug dealers and stuff to run rampant, and then afterwards when it builds up enough to say that we need this mandatory vaccine, that we need these laws, that we need to censor people's speech, that we need to invade people's privacy, that if you have any sort of political opinion that you're going to be followed or singled out from society. And ladies and gentlemen, again, part of the reason why I make these videos is so that you can take a look at how we're actually already being put in that environment. And it's so blatant to the point where they tell you this is what's happening. And also when you question it, there's also something also saying that it's conspiracy theory. Why are you focusing on that? Why are you talking about that? You know, so while this is happening to us, while we're losing our rights, while we're being put deeper into a system that we clearly don't need and is quite harmful for our futures, now when we try to question things after we're being told that this is the future we're entering, kind of being hinted, but not being told directly so that we cannot question it directly, and then when we do question it directly, why are you being a conspiracy theorist? Why are you asking those kind of questions? Like, we don't talk about politics. Like, we're having a good time here. Like what is this? Like, I don't want to hear about that. You know, I don't want you discriminating me. I don't want you saying this against me. And you got to see with especially with the LGBT movement, how it's being installed through intimidation, through force. Just how people say, I don't want religion being crammed down my throat. This LGBT thing is being crammed down our throat. I'm saying that they're going to mandatory educate kids with this. So that's when parents have to say, hey, listen, I don't want my child at school being educated by this LGBT situation. If you're going to have that, if you're going to have sex ed, you know, please tell me the days so that I can have my child not go to school on that day. Or you can separate my child from that curriculum. Or if you are going to be talking about sexual education, you know, at what age exactly you're going to be talking about it, please send me a pamphlet of what you're going to be discussing with my child and to see if maybe I got to say or how you're going to be discussing with my child. And that's also part of the thing we got to look at, is that the reply that we get is, you know, why are you questioning us? You got to stand behind the science. Why are you questioning this vaccination? Why are you questioning this movement? Don't you believe in love? Are you being hateful? Are you this? Don't you understand that there's a legislation or a law or an act in the law that has prevented you from saying this and this and that? That's why we have to question. That's why we have to speak. And that's why we have to bring back community meetings, you know, like, and with this whole social distancing thing, without really people realizing it, the government for a while, and they could still do this, especially with a lot of the laws that they're trying to install and a lot of the old laws that they got making this possible, they were taking your ability, away the ability you had to get together as communities, to speak, where any phone call, where any social gathering, where any communication could have been investigated. So if you would have had a government, which we almost kind of have in a way, a government like China, let's just say a really tyrannical government, that's what I'm saying, we kind of have a government like that because they do investigate people for the most dumbest stuff. They do install laws based on these hypocritical things of protecting us and protecting our privacy while they're actually invading our privacy, protecting our free speech while they're actually taking away our free speech, saying that this group needs to be recognized and needs to be protected for their free speech, while saying that everybody else's free speech is going to be taken away, especially like installing something through the LGBT, trying to install secular religions that are more religions based on science and like a modern satanic religion where everything goes. This is my belief, this is how I do, oh, and this is where it's my religion, because as soon as you say what you're going to say, I have to blot it out. I have been taught that I am not allowed to hear it. I have this liberal point of view, or this socialist point of view, or even this right-wing point of view, or this fascist point of view, or it has to do with my skin color. You see what I'm saying? It can be shaped in any way. It doesn't just have to be the left. You know, it can be the right and the left. In fact, the right and the left in our countries are basically controlled by the center. It's manipulated. Let's have this group argue against that group so that we can install laws in between. You see what I'm saying? And then perhaps we can get both the groups to argue with each other but agree with one law. You know what I'm saying? And with the whole COVID-19, of course, you know, we got to protect ourselves. But this virus, which was affecting people with specific health problems and health risks that were already underlying their health to be corroded and to be at risk for the extra stuff that could, make them lose their lives. Let's just say it's like a really bad cold. And instead of letting people develop an immunity to it, letting people to understand it, and for people to properly protect themselves, they say, okay, we got to install this vaccination. We got to control all lines of communication. Wherever people are going to go, all movement has to be watched and controlled for the sake of protecting people against this virus. And that's what I'm saying. What if it's a really tyrannical government, which kind of we already have in a way, using the reasons that I'm just going to explain to you to simply just censor you, to just monitor where populations are, to remove populations from certain areas. Why? Because that government's trying to free up space, trying to do this, trying to take away people's speech so they can rob them further. Why? Because it's not just government. You got to understand that. Government is ran by people that are just like me and you, regular people who want to be honest, want to be good, but obviously anybody can be greedy, anybody can be corrupted, anybody can be compromised, and no matter how good you think you are, with enough power, aren't you going to eventually begin to favor things? What if someone's going to remove that power? What if someone's going to take away that silver spoon away from your mouth and your kid's mouth for 10 years? Because you have to now relinquish your power. People don't do that, is what I'm trying to say. And that's why we have laws and things, and we have fought wars, World War I, World War II, the Poppy, Remembrance Day, speaking against fascism, where colleges are filled with this radical against fascism to the point where they're promoting communism, which in a way I would say is like 10 times worse than fascism, because actively it actually proved itself for decades and after decades after decades to be an effective system in massacring people and enslaving people. In fact, we even had a Cold War against it, which wasn't really a Cold War to defeat it. It was more a Cold War to keep it at bay, while the systems basically grabbed land and power by fighting the war against each other. That's kind of what I mean, how, they're the carpenters, we're the wood, we're the forest that they're cutting down, and yes, they may be putting each other out of business and fighting, and one guy's ticket got compromised, and this guy can't build, this guy didn't get his wood shipment. We're the wood that they're shipping. We don't got to say, we're the ones being... And you know what I'm saying? And the thing is that they're not lions and we're not gazelles. We're not zebras. They're not a different species that, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, they're humans just like us. So in a way, anybody can do this. Anybody can be that one with that power. And anybody can be the one that's dealing with those things, being compromised in that way. So I'm trying to describe to you, like to use your common sense. Really look at what life is. Ask questions. Like I said, community meetings, don't be naive. Understand that what we're governed by is not just this nice thing that is promoting this peace and love, and we're just these ununderstanding citizens that can't stand behind the science. Understand that they will manipulate the science, that they will lie with the science, that they will say that the science says this, or they will make it look like the science says that. Just like they used God and used religion in the past. And in what happens today? People hate religion. People can't hear Christ. People can't hear a good person actually want to share something good. Why? Because government in the past manipulated that. What if there is good socialism? And no, all we think about is communism. I'm not going to say that fascism, what we fought against and the idea was good, but what if there was good modifications? What if we've taken from all those things? That's what people don't realize. Our governments have already taken from those things. We've already taken from the fascist ideas, from the communist ideas, from the tyrannical, from the days of oppression, and from the good and from the bad, and that's what we're making our modern governments as. That's how science figures out what's good and what's bad, and that's what the majority of our religion is basically just as well showing us our history, showing how human nature can be, what's been done, tested, proven, what's been discarded as not useful to what's useful. You see, we've been doing it since the very beginning with science, religion or not. We've been figuring things out and living and making sure that things are in check. And I'm telling you that there's no possible way that we can just leave it into government and have pampered, spoiled people completely just fix everything. No, we have to resist. We have to say something different. We have to question. And I'm saying that I guarantee that once you start to question, once you start to see things, once you start to discuss it with your peers and just use common sense, you're going to begin to see that, yes, we are being governed by tyranny. Yes, our politics is something that we all want to get away from, but it's something that we got to learn about. And I feel bad for the people out there, me being one of them, who just don't want to focus on this. You have to. And not focus on what CNN says and what this politician says. No, focus on what's happening. How is this affecting me? Am I going to have food for the future? Am I going to have a job? Look at this COVID stuff. And then they're talking about our society now going cashless in order to avoid problems and disease and all that. Come on, folks. Use your common sense. Cashless for what? To the point where the carbon taxes is what you're being carbon taxed for buying milk, where you have tax levies for everything, where you have fines for everything. You did something, you said a bad word, now you got this Siri or this little thing in your house, like those little black devices that was being promoted. Have it in your house, you can talk to it, it plays music and all that. It's also listening to what you say. You're given these companies the right that are connected to the intelligence and to the local government and the local policing systems. And you're seeing how our government, our intelligence, what's supposed to defend us, is now being used against us to control us. It's no longer a war being fought somewhere else. Now it's the war being fought against its own people. And that is how to control and enslave its people. What I describe sounds like pretty dark, but you begin to see it for yourself. Just begin to study. That's all I ask. Keep yourself safe. Keep following laws, the good laws, go to work, raise your family the way you're supposed to, get them educated, get all their medical needs met. Respect people and what they want to do with their lives, their religious beliefs, their orientations, just like we're being taught today, through our education system, through our media, through laws. Keep following them, but also start questioning. When they start saying, hey, you can't change these laws, you can't do this, you can't appeal, you can't get together, you can't say certain things, of course you have to question about it. Even if it's like kind of in a way disobeying that law, because there's certain laws that shouldn't exist. If people are telling you that you cannot be yourself, that you cannot express yourself, obviously they're the ones breaking the laws. They're the ones changing a law that is there protecting your ability to be a human, and they're saying that we got to change this law for whatever reason because we're trying to protect you and this and that. And then when you try to ask questions and you're suspicious over it, they want to censor you, maybe even take away your freedom. That's pretty serious. And that's the whole point of questioning things. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, these videos are getting censored. Believe it or not. Just for sharing these things, we're getting censored. Censored. Why would they censor you? If they're saying that they're encouraging free speech, freedom of expression, that they want everybody to be safe and good and happy, and they want for everybody to evolve, to use more of the common sense. I don't see it that way. I see it quite the opposite, and the majority of us do. And that could give a pretty big clue on why we're being censored, for me even being able to shine light on these things. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Keep yourself safe. Keep your mind and your ears open, and try to do things right by using your common sense. Okay? Anyways, God bless you, and take care.